Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. To Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul.
Tammi Mac, ay, Tammi Mac, yeah. Ooh, that Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac, ay, so you know it's Tammi Mac, ay, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. So being a Black man in America has never been easy. And I'm not saying me being a Black man in America, just the stories that I've heard from Black men, the Black men in my life, sharing their story about how difficult it is just to be a Black man in America. And I mean, come on. As of the last year and a half, we have really dived into the difficulties facing Black men. Well, these challenges faced by the contemporary Black man are evolving with the times, but there is still such a long way to go. Come on, people, why we can't show our Black men no love? I mean, it's a long way to go before we have the equal and necessary resources to battle our demons. Well, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the business of being Black tonight is Black men and mental health. Please welcome scientist, author, and the founder of the mental health nonprofit, the Acoma Project, Dr. Alfie Breeland Noble. Hi, Dr. Alfie. How are you tonight?
Wonderful. How you doing? Thank you for having me.
In here. Wellness expert, motivational speaker, and the author of Strong in the Broken Places, Quentin Vinny. Hi, Quentin.
How you doing? It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you. And mental health professional and the author of Man, Just Express Yourself. I don't think it's yourself. That's just what I think he used the actual yourself. Man, just express yourself. James Harris. I don't want to change the title of your book. You know,
appreciate it. Definitely appreciate that.
People go looking for yourself, and it's yourself. You know, you're a Black man who speaks correct grammar. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to, ghettoify it in any way. Thank you so much for being here, James. So the first question, the traditional question of the Tammi Mac Late Show is, why should Black people care? And so I ask you, and James, let's start with you. Why should Black people care about the mental health of Black men?
That's an interesting question, but I definitely think people should care not only for the mental health of Black men, but the mental health of all people, for the simple fact that overall wellness is something that's lacking, whether that's physical health or mental health. So I definitely think we should contribute more efforts to our overall wellness, specifically to mental health and specifically for Black men, because the Black man is currently being targeted in many different areas, whether that's through the pandemic or whether that's through unresolved trauma and grief. So a lot of people are becoming numb and desensitized to it, and we continue to expand on different cycles. So I think, we have to put forth a lot of effort and try to change the dynamics that's going on.
Yeah. Quentin, what do you say? Why should Black people care about the mental health stability of Black men?
I mean, I think at the heart of it all, Black men are still dealing with a lot of trauma, dealing with the societal standard of what it means to be a man, what it means to be Black in America. And I think it's time for us to break those negative stigmas. I think it's time for us to redefine what masculinity means, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, what it means to be Black in this country. It's time for us to stand up and heal. And I don't think that we will have the equal opportunity to start the healing process unless we come together collaboratively in order to address those issues that have yet to be addressed.
Yes. Dr. Alfie, I'm a Black woman.
Yes.
Why should I care about
Yes.
Black men's mental health?
Yeah, lots of reasons. Yielding to what my brothers have just said. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a niece, I'm a sister, and many other things. And so for me, it really comes down to the Black men in my life whom I love, the Black men in my life who, people I don't know personally, but maybe I'm acquainted with them. And I think all of it really is about looking at some of the statistics that have shown up during the pandemic that started to emerge just before the pandemic. There's this significant and heart-wrenching report called Ring the Alarm from Bonnie Watson Coleman, who's a representative. She's in the House of Representatives, a congresswoman that I helped to write with a whole plethora of all these superstar Black folks, Dr. Mike Lindsay and some other folks. And one of the things that's in there that really gives me pause is these exponentially rising rates of suicide attempts and completions by Black young people, Black boys specifically. So their rates are going like this between the ages of 5 and 12, while other kids' rates are going like this. That is something that, and that's why the report's called Ring the Alarm. So those are some of the reasons, because as a child and adolescent person, that's what I'm passionate about. We want to start catching these things in childhood and the teen years before they escalate and turn into some of these other significant issues. One other thing I'll say, we should care because a significant number of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated have untreated mental illness, which I think contributes to some of the struggles that they have, as well as substance abuse, people self-medicating. So those are all reasons for me, you know, above and beyond the fact I just love brothers, right? So I want brothers to be all right. So that's why, you know, you and I care, Miss Mac, because we love Black men.
Yes, Lord, I love me some Black men. I can't even lie. Ooh, child, there is something about a Black man and his swagger.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I feel like I normally don't chime in on this question, but I do believe that Black people should care about the mental stability of Black men because they are our fathers.
Yes.
You know, they are
Yes.
our fathers.
Yes.
And that's important. That's very important for them to keep breeding and keep the Black family alive, if you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? Like keep it coming. No pun intended. James, you talked about unresolved trauma and grief. What are some unresolved trauma and griefs that the Black man has to go through?
I mean, right now, just looking at society, so when I say unresolved, I mean it's like repeatedly, back to back, even if we start way prior to last year, but just looking at it, it was like a death every other week in the news of an African-American man getting killed unjustifiably by the police. So those things continue to cause detriment to our demographic specifically, because one, our children are watching this thing, whether it's social media or on the news. And then two, just Black men itself are easily agitated, hypervigilant, all of those things playing a part in the central nervous system. So it's no real decompressing based on that being a Black man, because you know every time not only are you viewing it from a standpoint of different people out to get you, but now the people who are sworn to protect you are also out to get you. So those things can have so many different emotional signs, whether that's sadness, anger, fear, shame, emotional detachment. And with that trauma piece as well, you can have those nightmares, the insomnia, the difficulty in relationships, emotional outbursts. So it's difficulty forming relationships or having relationships, whether those dynamic is, you know, the child-parent relationship or your coworkers or your teammates or any other relationships for that matter. And then there's a lot of physical signs too, that trauma that people often don't associate with, like nausea, the dizziness, headaches, the gastrointestinal issues, and the sleep issues as well. So all of those things happen from a traumatic stance, and it's constantly in the news. So, you know, we have to do our part as well by being careful what we ingest, you know, taking breaks or modifying what we're viewing on social media or the news. All information is not good information. So we got to decipher which is, so we can break those cycles.
Quentin, you talked about how, you know, most people don't know what it is to be a Black man, and particularly a Black man in this country. So what is it to be a Black man? I don't know.
I think to be a Black man in this country is to live in a constant state of fear, frustration, anger, and anxiety, right? It's the idea that my very existence is not worthy, right? It's not worthy of resources. It's not worthy of love. It's not worthy of life, right? And I think when you walk out into a world or into a society that is constantly reminding you of, you know, of you're invaluable, that you are invaluable, right? It creates a level of hopelessness and a lack of faith in yourself, right? And it becomes psychosomatic, right? I think we're told more about the things that we are not and less about the things that we are, right? We're not reminded of the fact that we are kings. We're not reminded of the fact that we are strong beyond our physical acumen, right? We're not reminded of our intelligence. We're constantly berated, and told that if we show some kind of emotion or vulnerability that we are weak. We're constantly being told what it means to be a man without having the opportunity and ability to determine what it means to be a man for ourselves.
That's interesting that you would say to be a Black man is to live in a constant fear. I find it rather ironic and contradictory to how America portrays the Black man. Just the very thing you say, to be a Black man is to live in constant fear. Yet it is America that fears the Black man. That's quite interesting. And what's even more interesting is there is absolutely, positively, historically no reason for America to fear the Black man, but there is every historical record that indicates the Black man should fear America. We're going to take a quick break. Come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black is Black men and mental health. So please welcome scientist, author, and the founder of the mental health nonprofit, the Acoma Project, Dr. Alfie Breeland Noble, wellness expert, motivational speaker, and the author of Strong in the Broken Places, Quentin Vinny, and mental health professional, and the author of Man, Just Express Yourself, James Harris. So I want to talk about Black men, maybe, and how do I say this? Maybe causing themselves mental problems by not being emotional or expressing the issues that they go through outwardly. I think as a Black woman, and Dr. Alfie, you can share if you'd like as well, but we often have to pull information out of our Black men. Like pulling teeth, we have to, well, what's wrong, baby? Nothing's wrong with me. It seems that the Black man internally goes through everything, every stressor by himself. And how and where did that come from, Dr. Alfie?
I think absolutely. So I think a lot of it, most of it, I would say is historical. I think about the ways in which we socialize men in terms of race and gender. And I think specifically about those of us who are descended from those people who were brought over here in chains, who were enslaved. That's the vast majority of us who are in the United States who are Black, but I'm also cognizant of our brothers and sisters who immigrated from the Caribbean and who immigrated from the continent, as well as Black Latinx people. And I think in all of those cases, what men are socialized, Black men are socialized, is contradictory. So on the one hand, right, they're socialized to be, I say this delicately because I think different people get it in different ways, but men in general in the United States are socialized, you the head of the house, right? You have to be in charge. You have to be the primary breadwinner. Think about the messages that men hear and how things like if you're a spouse and your spouse happens to be a woman, because I'm mindful of LGBTQ brothers too, how if she makes more money than you, how that's emasculating, right? Those kinds of things. So the messages that I think Black men get are very contradictory, which then I think makes it very difficult for them to figure out what is their space. Now, what I will say is that millennial brothers, I have to say this, I feel like are trying much harder, and I see much more visible effort to try to do what they call breaking intergenerational chains, right? So there's this young brother I follow on Instagram, and he's walking around with his little infant baby girl, always talking about the messages that were imparted to him that he's trying very hard not to move forward. So I think a lot of it is historical. I think it stays with us. It gets inculcated in your DNA. And so that stuff gets passed down. And you also see it in the people, in your parents and the people you respect. Men don't cry. Men don't show vulnerability. You work out everything on your own. You don't ask for help. But then think about it like this. For Black men, who you gonna ask? Right? Because if, maybe the other brother can't help you because he's not expressing himself either. And historically, you can't go ask the white man, because he may not give it to you what you need. And on top of that, you may get persecuted for asking and looking weak. So I think there's so many ways in which brothers are bombarded. The gentleman can speak to this much more eloquently than I, but I think our responsibility is to really demonstrate to young men how they can express themselves in healthy ways, and why taking care of your mental health is a sign of strength, not a sign of vulnerability, because it puts you in a better position to be a part of the community and to contribute.
Yeah, I see both of my men here like wiggling in their seats. I don't even know who to ask to chime in on this. James, go ahead.
Oh, that's cool. I'll definitely go. I was going to yield to my man Q, but yeah. So to be honest with you, that's why I wrote the book. I wanted it to be a platform and a way for men to not only be able to articulate how they feel, but to, express how they feel openly without being chastised or demonized. And like the doc said, it definitely is from a historical standpoint, but it's also from a current standpoint too, of how society, put those pressures and labels on men currently. So the notion of vulnerability equating to weakness has damaged a lot of relationships and halted a lot of emotional maturity in some men, starting at an adolescent age, and this. So the real thing is, it can come from not only men itself, but also from women. And I think that's overlooked often. They think it's more men creating that masculinity factor, but it's also women that can create it as well. So we definitely have to be ensured that we're breaking the cycles for the up and coming generation.
Before I go to you, Quentin, I have to ask James, because he said something that I probably need to be educated on tonight. And you talked about women having a part in the emasculation of men. So please do tell.
Oh no. So I mean, from an overall standpoint, like oftentimes when you hear toxic masculinity, it's from a masculine standpoint, from men being toxic to other men in that regard. But also women can be share toxic masculinity as well. Like I was in several situations with women who have young boy as children. So from the standpoint of not wanting them to play with an easy bake oven. So this one example was, I was in the toy section with my daughter. I have a daughter, and this other lady had a son, and I guess he was around the same age as my daughter. I'm saying that based on the height. But she told him, don't get the easy bake oven because it's for girls. My man, I'm like, well, he's gonna learn how to cook one day or whatever. Couple weeks later, it was on back order. Couple weeks later, I see her in the grocery store with a man, and the question was, what are you gonna cook? And she replied, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're not going to cook anyway, to the man. So I'm like, yo, you just repeating the cycle. A couple weeks ago, you didn't want your son to get the easy bake oven, but now you're with this man who you're saying don't cook. So that's one of the examples, but it's so many more, based on like gender neutral and stuff like that. Like it can go both ways, because we're not promoting that. We're promoting it as a way of like sexual, but not from a way of life skills. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah, that's a rather intimate example of the same woman that you done seen in the grocery store and in the toy store. Like, right. You all up in that lady business.
No, because we was getting items and they were on back order. So when we went back, it was around about the same time.
She over there at the Toys R Us buying a microwave. The next day she with a man with getting groceries, and you listening to all of the tea. already to assume that this woman got all this toxic, passing on this toxic masculinity. Yeah, that is a good thing. That is something that I do believe women should know, even from the standpoint of colors. Blue is for boys, pink is for girls. It's only that way because we said it's that way.
Right.
Well,
there's nothing scientifically, and I'm gonna go to the scientists on this. There's nothing scientifically that says pink has anything to do with women and blue has anything to do. Well, I guess there is a little something that says pink has to do with women, but
the toys company switched that. It was I think it was Hasbro, like the toy manufacturer, because girls were being born at a faster rate than boys, so they decided to do they made it pink and made it more marketable.
Yeah, everything in America comes down
capitalism.
Yes, capitalism and commerce. Absolutely. Quentin, chime in here. Get in. Jump in this double dutch.
I think, you know, to expound on all of it, right? It's like we're taught from a very young age that vulnerability equals weakness. I feel like vulnerability is actually ultimate strength, because it takes a person that's strong, confident, and um and comfortable with who they are within their own manhood or masculinity, or however you want to describe it, to be vulnerable, right? It takes a strong person to come to another man or woman and say, in this moment, you hurt my feelings, right? Most people expect men to always react violently or angrily or aggressively, because that's how we've been perceived societally. As a father of two boys, as well as a father that was raised by a single mother, I'm having to break that cycle, right? My mother raised me. I'm from Baltimore. I'm from West Baltimore, right? The Wire was a TV show. Baltimore City is real, right? And so I was born in a city where vulnerability could be the difference between life or death. Showing some level of weakness could be the difference between whether your mother is welcoming you at home or she's about to bury you, right, a few weeks later. And so my mother raised me to be tough. She raised me to hide my emotion. She raised, and on top of it, my father wasn't in my life. He was addicted to heroin. He spent a long period of my life in prison. And so I didn't have another male figure to give me any examples of what masculinity even looked like, right? And so I had to learn about it from the perspective of a person who never knew what it was like to be a man, but knew all she wanted to do was safeguard her only son, right? And so because I was raised to not have feelings and emotions, as I got older and I started to see how that negatively impacted a lot of my relationships, and it was detrimental and led to my anxiety diagnosis and my panic disorder diagnosis and my depressive diagnosis and my addiction to prescription pills and my 2 failed suicide attempts, I made it an intentional effort to not pass that toxicity on to my own sons. So instead, I wanted to show them the example of what it looks like to be human. Because before we are man, before we are Black, before we are any of these things, we are first human. And to be human means to be a complex person. It means to have emotion and logic. It means to live in this level of equilibrium that for a long time, Black men have not been allowed to.
Dr. Alfie?
I think Quentin is absolutely right. And what I'm hearing being echoed is, in the field of psychology and psychiatry, and in these fields where we kind of create the science behind what they're describing, what's been lacking is attention to Black men's mental health, Black men's needs, Black men's values, what, the experiences that Black men have. And so I think in some ways we have a very limited understanding and limited vocabulary for just what these brothers are describing. But what we do know, what we think we know, are a couple things. One is, as I listen to them talk, I think about all this research behind something called allostatic load. And that's all the physical manifestations of what they're describing their individual experiences have been in the collective experience of Black men. So how does that show up? Cardiovascular disease, right? That we have higher rates of. It shows up, like specifically heart disease, diabetes, right? The rates at which Black men and Black people get cancer, and the stages and the advancement of it. All of those things come back to this idea of what we're forced to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I heard both of them talk about these huge things that Black men deal with. I want to come back and think a little bit about the day-to-day things that Black people have to deal with, right? That, like, we talk about microaggressions. It's the little stuff, like the brothers on the elevator, somebody gets on the elevator with him and they, doing this, right? Or you coming up the street and people don't look at you and speak. They see you, but they don't say anything to you. What's that about? And the ways in which when people are silent, we fill in the blanks. So one thing I want to make sure that people hear before we get off tonight is that the things that happen to you as Black men or Black women or Black people, they don't happen because we are Black, because you are a man, because you are a woman, because you're gay, because you're heterosexual, because you're transgender. They happen because of people's biases. So that, to me, that's very freeing, because it takes the responsibility and the onus off of me for your race is foolishness, for your sex is foolishness. It puts the responsibility on that other person to change their behavior. I can't change who I am. I can't change my gender. I can't change the skin color. I could change these life, but I don't want to. And so to me, that's one of the first keys to helping us free ourselves from the burdens that we carry that weigh us down in terms of our mental health. We don't own other people's bad behavior. So I hope my brothers will hear that. And I hope everybody listening will hear that, because that's one really important thing for our mental health. I
want to dive into that a little bit more when we come back, Dr. Alfie, because when you say we don't own that, but whether we own it or not, we are still penalized. And so for that fact, it's an acknowledgement that we have to pay attention to, because we're forced to pay attention to it when we can't buy a house, when we're watched in the store, when our business loan doesn't go through, when our interest rate is higher when we purchase a car than the white man that just walked in and purchased the same car. So even though we don't own those biases and that hate and that racism, we are penalized for someone else's bad behavior and what they feel about us. We'll tap into that. And Quentin, I'll come straight to you when we get right back on the Tammi Mac Lade Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Lade Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black is Black men and their mental health. Quentin, I want to yield to you because I know you had some words before we took break.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said about we can't own what doctor said, well, we can't own someone else's behavior. And Tammi, when you said, yes, we do suffer as a result of it, I'm a firm believer in the idea that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, right? And though we can't own their behavior, we can own how we allow it to permeate our lives, right? The fact is, these are issues that have been pervasive in America for as long as I can remember, for as long as we've been here, right? Unwillingly. And though we make some levels of progress, generationally, I don't know that things will ever be the way we want them to be. However, we can determine whether or not we allow these issues and these biases to take us completely out of the game, right? We have the ability to determine how we allow it to impact our lives, right? And so though we suffer from it. And is it unfair? Absolutely. But we see examples of people that thrive in the face of it every day, right? And if they can, we can too, right? And so I think at some point, right, this goes back to really understanding and navigating our own mental health, because it's our own resilience and it's our own tenacity that we have to tap into in order to be able to thrive in the face of this adversity, right? And I think, when we really take a step back and take that self-examination, we give ourselves permission to tap into that resilience, right? And to tap into, our keen ability to overcome, because if we didn't have that strength and that ability, we wouldn't be here talking about it today. White supremacy would still be leading, right? We wouldn't be having this dialogue on this network. There would be no network, right? And so I think we have to utilize those innate emotional and strength building abilities and capabilities that we have in order to really, continue to thrive in the face of it.
Yeah. And I think I would just add that it's coming back to, it's not ignoring that these things exist. I mean, here we are on your show. You a Black woman, right? You have this huge platform to give us an opportunity to be able to talk about these things. I think what I'm speaking to in terms of mental health is exactly what Quentin said. You see these things, you have these racist experiences, you have these sexist experiences, maybe even homophobic and transphobic experiences, or people with disabilities have these, we hit these walls. And it's not ignoring that we hit these walls because there's racism, sexism, and all these other isms out there. It is recognizing that it's not your fault. Right. And I think that's the thing that helps us right? Before you even get to resilience, it's understanding those microaggressions. Like you put the credit card in the person's hand. This was pre-COVID. They put the credit card, giving it back to you on the counter. That ain't your fault that they scared to touch you. That's on them. And so now you have a choice. How am I going to respond to this? Well, guess what? I ain't got to come back in this store. It's 55 other stores that's selling what you sell. I will take my business over there and vote with my feet, as opposed to shrinking and feeling like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Maybe I should do something different, because those are the things, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. If we keep owning all this stuff, we shrink. It can turn into things like depression. It can exacerbate anxiety. It can make us feel worse about who we are. It can detract from us. And I'm just asking us to not rise above it, but to acknowledge and understand this is not something that we've done. It's not about the color of my skin. It's about that person's ignorance and racism.
Right, right. I want to tap into our soulmates right now. So I'm going to the chat room. Let's see. Ursula O says, Black men are national treasures. We need them, period, with a T. TA says, pink was historically for noble men. That's nice to know. So pink was historically for men. Okay. Bruce Taylor, our soulmate, says it's a trust issue for sure when it comes to us as Black men internalizing struggles. Ooh, it's a trust issue. James, do you believe that? Is it a trust issue when it comes to Black men internalizing their struggles?
I mean, I'm not sure what they're trying to say, but to answer the question, I think it can be, because in most cases, us trying to articulate how we feel or what position we're in oftentimes can be used against us. Like, just realistically, like, if you're on a job and you have issues and you say, all right, I want to take off to go to therapy, that can be used against you. The perception would be, my job may find out, now I may get suspended or whatever, like it's laws and stuff against that, but people don't know that unless they do the research. Or you can feel like, if I disclose certain information, my children may get taken away. It's certain things and certain reasons why people feel that, they can't disclose certain things. So yeah, internally, I think is where we hold most of it in, because we don't know who to turn to or don't know the outlets or the safe spaces to do so. And most times, you probably can hear about it in a barbershop or in a mechanic shop or something like that, where it's male dominant. And then it's somebody probably with a relatable experience. But outside of that, yeah, I think it's more inward, opposed to projecting it on the outside. And if it is to be projected on the outside, it's in the form of displacement, to where now we're hurting the people vicariously, who we have to deal with, like our partners or our children dynamic or our teammates. And those things are unhealthy, and is more to our detriment, because now we're feeling guilty for, raising our voice with our children or responding to our spouse that way when they were only trying to help us, because we couldn't talk to the man at the job that way, or, somebody outside in the community that way. So those things, I definitely would agree that we deal with it internally, so we wouldn't, become more reckless, substance use, being promiscuous and stuff like that.
Yeah. When you said sometimes we, men will take it out on, their families or whatever, it immediately made me look, everybody knows, if you watch the Tammi Mack show, I am a good times junkie, right? And I mean, no one can beat me in a good times quiz. And it reminds me of the episode where James was suffering from high blood pressure, and he picked up the chair and threw it across the room and slammed it and broke it. And he was like, I do not have high blood pressure or stress. And they were looking like, but you just broke a chair across the room, Dad. So it is interesting how it does play out, and it's kind of spills over into the family unit without Black men, when Black men don't acknowledge it, and they don't even want to admit that there could possibly be a problem. So before I get to that, Deborah, our soulmate, says, my God, our community and our souls need a resurrection from what has been done to us by white people. You want to touch that one, Quentin?
Whew, that's a show all in itself.
Yeah,
You know,
I believe it
when
is. Let's
you
go to
know
our
when
soulmate incog here. It says, people's opinion of you should not be your problem. Unfortunately, it has a trickle down effect into various facets of everyday lives. Sometimes it can determine how far you'll advance or soar. And I think Quentin and Dr. Alfie commented on that, and how, there have been several successful Black people who have learned how not to take that internally. But the question is, Quentin, how do normal Black people, I mean, we see all these successful Black people, we see Barack, we see Oprah in them, we see them, and we obviously say, well, they had the money to da 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 da, or well, they had the fame to da 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 da. Not that any of that uh, helps a person who's depressed or mentally unstable, but this is the fallacy when it comes to those successful people that you mentioned. Regular average people like ourselves, we assume that because they have an infinite amount of resources, that they can tap into whatever is wrong with them mentally, financially, spiritually. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, and the reality is, to a degree, it's true, right? Like, they have the resources to go see a therapist and to dig a little bit deeper. I think for us, we need to redefine what success means, right? I don't, because I may not be president of the United States, right? My beginnings and where I am today for myself equates one hell of a success, right? Like, I came from nothing, poverty, raised by a single mom. Father was on drugs. Like, the things that I've experienced in my life to be where I am right now. I own a house in a community in my city that was once illegal for Black people to live. I'm one of two Black families on this block, right? Not saying that you have to leave and go and live in a primarily white community to be successful, but the fact that I am not where I started means that I've accomplished something that society, something that administrators and counselors and even myself at one point did not believe that I would, right? And so I think by having these types of dialogues and conversations, by making mental health and just the conversation of mental health more accessible, having the ability for other men to see men talking about it, so that it's not looked at, with this negative stigma associated and attached to it, right? To see Black women supporting us in our vulnerabilities and in our weakest moments, right? Like, having those things done on a community level, I think changes the trajectory and gives us the opportunity to move in a different direction.
Yeah, James, you want to tap in here?
Yeah, I definitely think we're doing that now, with my space, with your space, and just the lack of availability and resources that definitely plays a part in access. And I know also the cultural competence piece play a part in that as well, because it's not a lot of therapists who look like me, and that's part of the reason why I'm back in the field, so I can serve that the urban areas, the veterans, the men, and change the dynamics of what therapy is, because a lot of people only got the perception of, what they see on TV, and that can be a totally different aspect of when you're actually in my office or when you're in Doc's office. So it's a difference, so we have to create our own narratives. And I think we're doing a better job now of doing those things.
Excellent. We're going to continue to do a better job at it after this commercial break. We'll be right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. We see you, chat room. We're coming back to you. Keep chatting. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where the business of being Black tonight is Black men and mental health. Please welcome scientist, author, and the founder of the mental health nonprofit, the Acoma Project, Dr. Alfie Breeland Noble, wellness expert, motivational speaker, and the author of Strong in the Broken Places, Quentin Vinny, and mental health professional and the author of Man, Just Express Yourself, James Harris. James, I want to talk to you for a minute because you completed 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan before earning your master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So how did your experience in the military impact your decision to have a career in mental health?
Yeah, so appreciate you for acknowledging my service. But prior to that, my life impact had an impact on me joining back to the field of mental health. So I was a ward of the state, which means I was in foster care and group home. My father died when I was 5. My mom got sick with epilepsy when I was around 8 or so, like that. So the state stepped in because, she had seizures at random times. And being in the system, therapy was mandatory. And for me, it wasn't a pleasant experience because they were older white therapists and I'm this young kid from the project. So it was so unrelatable. So I didn't obtain as much as I could from therapy at those times. Fast forward into what you're talking about, me being in the military 8 years, 2 deployments, 1 Iraq, 1 Afghanistan. It was the same experience when I got back. Noticed that I was different. And I wanted to try therapy again to process what I was feeling from those 2 tours. And the same thing happened. Older white therapist, no combat experience. And, you know, I'm back at square one. And to be honest with you, that's why a lot of veterans tend to go to the groups opposed to individual therapy, because you got that shared experience opposed to just somebody talking what they potentially know from a book. So for me, I made that decision to go back and change that dynamic, not only for that young kid that's in the urban area who's with a therapist now, who's unrelatable, but of course for my veteran as well, for my men as well. And I get told all the time, you know, that I'm a unicorn just based on those things by parents, by, you know, whether that's that young kid saying, oh man, you dress like my uncle. You see my shoes in the back. You dress like my uncle, but you know, you saying this and you saying that, and you smart and stuff like that. So for me, it's gratifying to know that I can be an example and change the dynamic and how the young people open up. And it's building rapport and a cohesive unit, because a lot of people don't know that therapy is a process that's between both of us. It's not just me dictating what's going to happen. It's your process. So we're collaborating. And I think that gets lost when there is a different culture, like as far as cultural competence. So for me, yeah, all of those things played a part in me coming back and wanting to change the dynamic and helping people.
So we have to be grateful for a multitude of services that you threw in. Like your tour has been extended to the mental health tour. But what I find interesting, though, James, here is when I hear you say you did 2 tours and then you come back to America, and once again, there is nothing that helps and provides and cares for our Black brothers who serve our country, much like when you know when we were not allowed to eat at restaurants or sit on the bus in a certain place, and those guys who served in World War I, World War II would come back and they would be treated just as they were treated before they served the country. And here you are telling us you go serve the country, you come back, you can't receive proper therapy because all the therapists are white people who've never served in the military. But this is the resilience that Quentin talks about when he talks about Black people. You decide for yourself, you know what? I can just be that.
Yeah, you gotta change the dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, I can be what I'm missing. I can be what I'm missing. I love that. I love that so much. Quentin, you were the wellness keynote speaker for Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights camp. So can you share the highlights and what maybe led to that?
I have no idea how, well, Colin found me through a mutual friend, Wes Moore. Wes Moore, you know, is one of my biggest supporters. I think the Know Your Rights camp experience was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in my life. Not just because, you know, Colin is an incredibly humble, intelligent, you know, thoughtful individual, but we had almost 600 kids from all over Baltimore City come in and talk about things like nutrition, mental health, mindfulness, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, you know, just the vast amount of information that was given to our youth, and that this is something that he takes to major cities across this country, right? It's something that we don't see happen enough, you know, and it all started from his own sacrifice for himself. You know, it was a self-sacrifice that cost him his entire career, but instead of him wallowing in that, he chose to do something to continue to give back to the community. And to be a part of that, I think it was just such a beautiful opportunity and experience to show what we are capable as Black people when we are dealt a bad hand, right? We can choose to fold those cards, or we can choose to, you know, to recreate our entire existence and narrative as a result of it, right? We are not the things that happen to us. We are the things that happen for us, right? As long as we allow that, as long as we allow ourselves the opportunity to shift that narrative and change that.
I'm not sure if you were speaking of a personal experience earlier in the show when you said trying to commit suicide twice. Was that a personal experience?
That is a very personal experience.
And
When
so
I went
what
through,
made you decide to live?
after my second suicide attempt, I threw my hands up and I said, God, you win, right? Even left to my own devices, I couldn't kill myself correctly, right? And so there was obviously a reason for me to be here. I grew up Catholic and switched to Christianity, and now I feel like I'm more spiritual than religious. However, I've never lost a connection with the divine. And after that second attempt, I was a father of two. I was addicted to prescription pills. I had hit rock bottom. And it was in that rock bottom that I made the conscious decision that I would rather fight to live instead of merely living to die. And so that started my health journey. That started my my desire to figure out what my life was supposed to be on this earth and make it my life's mission to live that to its fullest extent.
What would you suggest to people who are in that situation and they want to take their life tonight?
That's a really deep and powerful question. I think the first thing, and it sounds a bit cliche, but like where you are today is not where you will always be. And that we are stronger than any circumstance that life can throw at us. We just have to give ourselves the opportunity and the chance to be patient. Trust the journey, trust the discomfort, right? We have to find comfort in being uncomfortable, especially as Black people. And, don't make a permanent decision to a temporary problem.
I'm going to take a temporary commercial break and come right back on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight we are talking about Black men and their mental health. Daryl Taylor, our soulmate, says masculinity must be expanded and redefined. Humanity must be brought to the forefront. Humanity, that is one thing that Quentin talked about tonight. It's not about being a man, a woman, Black or white. It's about humanity. Also, we must not be ashamed of the femininity that exists within us all as well. It's about balance. And I remember one day I was fussing at my husband. We were having an argument, and I said, "You acting like a little bitch." He said, "Well, every man got a little bitch in him." Said, "Whoop, that is argument over." Argument over.
Best response ever.
That's it.
Let's head to
Shut
the
it down.
bedroom.
Shut it down. That's right. Shut it down.
He shut it down.
Yeah.
Shouts out to Dr. Alfie and Breeland University here. Dr. Alfie, thanks for all of your work. Hashtag Black Mental Health Matters. Dr. Alfie, why don't you tell us about your work, your podcast, Couched in Color with Dr. Alfie?
Yeah, so a couple things. So the podcast is Couched in Color. We try to do exactly what we've done here, showcase a range of Black and brown people, showcase people with disabilities, showcase people who are LGBTQ and queer, because the ultimate goal is for everybody who's Black and brown to know that their mental health matters as well. And that's the whole purpose behind it being a video and audio, so you can see all this diversity as well as hear it. And that's the whole purpose behind the nonprofit as well, for our young people to understand that their mental health matters and that everyone deserves the opportunity for optimal mental health. So that's what we're about at acomaproject.org and acomaproject.org, all one word. The podcast is we're on Instagram, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and you can also find me at Dr. Alfie. That'll lead you to everywhere. DrAlfiee.com.
And James, tell us about your book, Man, Just Express Yourself, and the Healing Hub.
Yeah. So I think it's easier if you go to my website, men2heal.com, MENTOHEAL.com. And from there, you can purchase the book, Man, Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planner guide for boys and men.
We got it up, James. I'm a professional show. I'm a real talk show, James. We got you.
I got you. It's an interactive planner guide for boys and men to better express themselves. So we're talking about tough conversations, whether that's emotion, traumas, feeling, grief, anger, so many different topics. Women can buy this book for their husbands. They can process these topics over date nights, so she wouldn't be met with resistance. You know, it'll seem like a tool to enhance their relationship, opposed to a chore for the man. Parents can get the book for their sons. You can see how much he's grown. See, is he still triggered by the same thing? And of course, my fellas can get the book, you know, just to continue to work on that self-growth and that journey. Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart, but of course, my website, men2heal.com. And you also can subscribe to my YouTube channel from my website as well. And of course, my social media.
Quentin, your book, Strong in the Broken Places.
Strong in the Broken Places is a memoir, really diving in deep into exactly what we spoke about tonight. You know, my journey of growing up in the city, being, you know, raised by a single mom, the things that I've endured throughout my life, racism, you know, prejudice, mental health, addiction, health and recovery. You know, currently I just launched a new tea company, Greenhouse Teas, you know, trying to make wellness, overall wellness accessible. You know, we donate 3% of our profits to food education initiatives, community gardens, and, you know, just creating resources and opportunities for Black and brown people that have been negatively impacted by systemic racism. You can find me on quentinvinny.com, Quentin Vinny on all social platforms, as well as greenhouseteas.com.
And that's Vinny with an E.
That's Vinny with an E.
Thank you so much, Quentin. Thank you, Dr. Alfie and James. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about Black men and mental health during the Mental Health Awareness Month. That's the Tammi Mac Late Show. And until tomorrow, everybody, it's a blessing to be in your box on Fox Soul. Bye, y'all.